I'm not a big fan of the whole thing on guilty pleasures because, well, a guilty pleasure is what we call a social construct. And I actually not long ago wrote a paper on the social constructions of difference. Social constructs, again, are, this is what the majority says, should be accepted. Excuse the language, but I think, fuck that.
I go for it.
To do that these days.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Kyl Reber podcast. This is a podcast where we interview what may seem on the surface as very ordinary people who are doing very extraordinary things, who are coincidentally all my friends. Like that country music song I heard the other day. I have some famous friends that you will never know. So I have a lot of friends that do very amazing things, and I think it's a good opportunity to expose and appreciate what they do. This person is no exception. I have known this fine young lady for a number of years. We have travelled across the world together. We have done a lot of stuff, and it's been very good to get her on the podcast. So Tania Rowan, welcome.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the young lady comment.
Getting in my appreciation. Tania's working at her beach house at the moment, which is, she's exploring a new chapter in her life, which is good. But we will get to a few of the previous chapters and new chapters right now. But for those who are new to this podcast, the way we have this set up is we have a series of 10 questions. I am nice enough to give the interviewees the questions prior to the podcast because they do require a little bit of thought. They are questions that maybe are a bit thought-provoking, could be a bit confronting maybe for a couple of them, but it does definitely get the conversation started. And it also allows us every now and then duck off on a few tangents, which, apologies in advance, we always do. So question number one, which is always the interesting one, and we spoke about it off air, birth to now in 7 minutes, and it's never 7 minutes. 3, 2, 1, go, T.
All right. So I grew up in a small country town in regional Victoria. It's called Cobden. Two brothers and my mum and dad. I went to primary school in Cobden, secondary school in Cobden, but I left school at 15. That was probably one of the best things that I did. A lot of people, questioned it at the time because I was so young.
What was your reasoning for wanting to leave so young?
One of the things I'd always wanted to do was work in pharmacy. And there was a job going at the pharmacy around about 10 minutes away. So, and I didn't think I'd ever really do well at school. I enjoyed school, but I wasn't particularly what I would call a smart student. And I sort of learned as an adult why I struggled. So that's a whole other story. And then when I did ask a teacher for a reference when I wanted to leave and I wanted to apply for that job, he told me not to waste my time because I'm not good enough and I wouldn't get the job. He told me that 3 times. So that was probably, now I look back, that was a game changer for me to get the job. And I stayed there for probably like 13 years.
Yeah, right.
Had kids. I met Peter, my husband, when I was 15 as well.
Yep.
I got married when I was 21. Had kids. Then my husband's a dairy farmer. I'm not a dairy farmer. I am a dairy farmer support person.
You're very adamant about that. I am not a dairy farmer.
Yeah. I'm going on the tangent. I can go off on that. And then I eventually decided I wanted to do something different. So I went and became a personal trainer, opened up my own studio, and did that for 14 years. And then just over a year ago, I closed that because in between all of that, I went to uni and I did a psychology degree. So probably was a little bit brighter than I thought I was at high school. I was diagnosed with ADHD about nearly 8 years ago, which kind of answered all those questions from secondary and primary school. Then I decided to start a business during COVID lockdowns, just
As you
because
do.
Pete needed more grey hairs. And so I started an ADHD coaching business. I did so I did basic, advanced level, and then family ADHD coach training in the US, which was all online, thank God. It was great because all of the classes were live and you had to make sure you attended. So lockdowns kind of come at a good time. And then that business was becoming so busy that I couldn't keep both the gym and do that. So it was becoming my real passion area. So I decided to close my gym after 14 years. And it's kind of like the universe said, hey, she's now got more time. Let's fill that time. And I'm now doing something that I really, really love.
So,
and in between that, I've done things like martial arts and
so we're gonna. I love the way you sort of like you gave us the streamlined version. Now I'm going to go back and pick it apart. So let's start. So 2 kids, Sophie and Josh, both grown up now. So they're both pursuing their own sorts of things.
Yeah, they both. Oh well, Josh is in Melbourne. He works at La Trobe University, and Sophie, she's currently in the Federated States of Micronesia. She's doing an internship with the United Nations.
And they're very like you, and this is one thing I've always admired you for, and you would admit every now and then it bites you in the butt. You don't do things by halves, and the candle is regularly burnt at both ends.
Yes, that's been a bit of an issue, but I have become very, very good at saying no. And
I think so again, you were doing, when we obviously met through martial arts, so in between all that other stuff, how old were you when you started martial arts?
18, nearly 19, yeah, just about to turn 19.
What led you into that?
So one of my best friends was doing Zendokai, and she used to always try and get me to go along, and I'd go, nah, that is not for me. I'm not doing that. And then a guy I know locally came into the pharmacy where I was working, and he had 2 black eyes. I was like, whoa, what happened to you? And he had a fight in the ring. So I was like, man, I want to learn how to do that. I started for all the wrong reasons, but I always say I stayed for the right reasons.
But your reasons change, don't you? You know, like they
that's right.
They will change. But
again, it wasn't that easy.
You didn't just do you didn't just go twice a week or whatever. You ended up, obviously you've excelled in that, and then you were at one point involved heavily in the behind the scenes stuff of that organization. So again, it's just that thing where you seem to have this habit of catapulting yourself into all this sort of stuff as well. Do you think that's like you're talking about your ADHD, and we will talk about that more, but is that a thing where you've just, I've got to, do more. I've got to do more.
Yeah, very much an ADHD thing. And opportunities were being presented, and I was like, well, why not? I can do it. I can fit that in. Really supportive husband, and my parents were really supportive with the kids when they were younger. I mean, still are even as adults. But yeah, I was able to find ways to make it work. But it was definitely a team effort.
Growing up in rural country Victoria, very different experiences to city Victoria. Was there just never like you said, you've pretty much lived there your entire life. There was just never a attraction to leave? Like you were just where you were just happy where you were, or did that get tested every now and then?
Definitely has been tested a lot. Yeah. A lot.
Because you like pace, like you're busy, like you're one of these people too that's always out doing something. Like you're in Melbourne so much, you're out here, out there, but that's always just been home.
Yeah, and I guess because I got married so young, and we had the farm. I think Pete realised that I was somebody that needed more, and he was happy for me to go and do my training in Melbourne and see friends, and sometimes he'd come, sometimes he'd have to work. So it became a real team effort on how it worked, and he was really supportive of that because he knew that I needed that.
Yeah.
If I didn't have it, I think I would have went crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and I'm not a lover of not being in town. I've done that now for 26, 27 years. Probably 7 years ago, nearly 10 years ago, I really said, hey, eventually I don't want to be here on the farm. I want to move into town, so we need to think about what you're going to do when you retire and how that's going to work. So I had to sort of plant that seed and just slowly water it because dairy farmers aren't particularly fast movers.
Is Pete a generational farmer? So this is just in his blood?
Yeah. And it ends with him because neither of our kids are interested in farming. So, and we've known that from when, our kids were really young. Yeah. So his parents passed away sort of within 12 months of each other, over a year ago. And, he's been saying for a while, his body's breaking down. It's not coping the same. So I was like, this is the time to really water that seed.
I'm going to pounce.
That's good. Yeah. So now we're sort of starting to go into another phase, and we've bought sort of our forever home in Torquay, and we love it. So
the personal training side of things, and then like starting that, obviously having a passion for it, but then letting it go in order to pursue something that was your passion. Was that hard?
No.
Good.
Not at all.
Why wasn't it hard? Because a lot of people might think it would have been hard. So,
it's not hard.
What I mean to say is you would.
In my head, it was hard.
That's right, but you are a person who sacrifices a lot of your time for other people, and have in the past. Yeah. I can see in you, and especially in the last couple of years, because we've known each other for a long time, there's definitely been a shift in your mentality. Not like, there's a difference between self-care and selfish, but have you just made a decision that I'm going to do this for me?
Yeah, that's a big part of it for sure. So I was getting really run down. I hit a wall just after I'd been to visit you guys. I think 2 days after I got back from Queensland, I ended up in hospital and I hit a wall big time. So I had really severe burnout and my autonomic nervous system literally just crashed. So then I realized I had to change some things, but I was realizing too that I was giving a lot of time to everyone else, but not necessarily pursuing some of the things that I really, really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think a lot of people understand martial arts instructors. A lot of martial arts instructors do it voluntarily. They're not run as businesses, and there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to make clubs run, whether they're business or voluntary clubs. I was giving a lot, and then something just needed to change. Then with the gym, the early mornings, late nights because you could have cleaned the gym late, and then I was studying when I was doing my psych degree. There was just so much happening, and I was like, something has to give. Actually, it was my kids that said, "So what's going to give here, Mum?"
Yeah, it's funny how I was saying this someone recently. Our kids teach us more about ourselves than we will often teach them. Yeah,
it can be a bit of a moment when they start saying the things to you that you've often said to them.
That's it, isn't it? It's the influence over authority, and you telling them one thing and then you're doing another. Yeah. Do you so the coaching that you do now, give us a little run through of what Tania does these days.
Yep. So I work with adults and kids as an ADHD and an executive function coach. So not every single person I work with has ADHD or autism. It can be anyone that's having a lot of stress, that has been through a lot of trauma, is really struggling with what we call the executive function. So they're the parts of the brain that work with working memory, planning, prioritizing, organization, being able to sit back and think about your actions. So that metacognition, a whole bunch of them. Anyway, I work with people on how to build skills to improve those. And
so you're mostly working with adults, kids, school groups, big mix?
No, I don't do groups. work majority now seems to be kids. So
Okay.
I was getting so many kids that I didn't have times after school, and I contacted one of the schools that was referring a lot of kids to me and said, thanks so much, but I just don't have the space. I'd have to see them through the day, so someone would have to bring them. And they said, would it help if we gave you a space here at the school? I was like, sure.
Yes, it would.
So that started off, say 3 hours a fortnight, and then that school I'm now there 2 full days,
Wow.
1 week, and then I did professional development workshops for educators, and I did 2 days in a row where I did 2 professional development workshops at this one school. One was on ADHD and executive functioning, and the other was on working with kids with challenging behaviours. And that particular day was a really interesting one. And they, after the workshop, the principal come up and said, would you like to come and work for us? So I said, I can give you 1 day a month at the moment. So I sort of set my fee, what I wanted, and they approved that. And then now I'm there 2 full days. So they pay me 1 day, and then I do privates the following day. So now that's 2 full days at 2 different schools. And then over the last year, that's grown. So now I'm back at that other school on the alternate week for nearly another full day.
Wow.
And then I think this year I'll be back at a different school in Warrnambool, which is about nearly an hour from me. So it looks like I'll be doing that this year. And I work from home generally 2 days with adults.
And this is something you and I have spoken about a lot, but this is something where I guess in this day and age is obviously much more wider accepted than it was 20 years ago. This is a Pandora's box kind of situation that you're opening up with these kids where, and again, like for yourself, you know, getting diagnosed later in life, but these kids are now, I guess, from such an earlier age, they're able to accept themselves. This is me. Like, you know, 100%. I'm not a freak. I'm not a misfit. I'm not an idiot. This is actually a real thing.
Yep. So I teach them. I do psychoeducation around it. So we teach them about their brain and what ADHD is and how it's affecting them. And we go through a whole bunch of different stuff, and then we work on skills. I do an activity at the start of every session, and the kids can choose. So we'll often do physical stuff. So we might do basketball, we might do sprints. Sometimes I'll put like a heart rate strap on them. And I give them my phone. They have the app so they can see, we do breath work. So they can see that when you do that breathing drill, it actually brings your heart rate down. When you get stressed and dysregulated, that breathing drill that we do when you're puffed brings your heart rate down. So it's a way of training them and teaching them that as we do it. We might play a brain game, but then we get into the work side of things. So it's good. I think last year, probably one of the highlights for me is I had 4 kids in one classroom, and one kid wanted me to help him teach his parents and siblings about his brain and his ADHD. So we brainstormed how we could do it and come up with the idea of putting together a PowerPoint. And then he said, would you come to my house and help me present it to my mum and dad? So his parents were all for it. And then he went back to his classroom and said, I'm doing a PowerPoint and Tania's going to come to my house. Those kids were like, well, we want to do that too. So those 4 kids ended up doing one together and presenting it to their teachers. And then the vice principal was there, who I've known most of my life. And I looked over at her and she was really emotional because these kids are saying, we're not broken. We don't need to be fixed. We just need you to teach us something in a different way. And they're proud of it. They're proud of it. They were amazing. Yep. So from that, the vice principal asked them would they like to present that to all of the staff at that school. And they had someone, it was a Catholic school, so they had someone from the Catholic Education Department there who was rewriting a lot of the stuff for working with neurodivergent kids. So she's sitting there going, this is what we need. We've got these kids telling us this works well, this doesn't work. You telling us what to do doesn't work, but you helping us come to a solution. You know, it's like that coach approach. You don't tell someone what to do. You work with them and come up with a strategy. So it must be incredibly rewarding to see just the change in these kids. Having said that, does it get taxing up here every now and then? Yes, it can. Yeah, definitely it can, because like you'll come home some nights and you go, I just need to sit. I just need a bit of quiet. Yeah. Well, that's been that's been me for a very long time. So I come even out of the gym. I couldn't sit down and have dinner with everyone straight away. I have
Yeah.
to just go and calm. I need some quiet. I need no voice, no sound.
Because you spend all this
But
time, and I get it too, coaching, you spend all this time on for hours. And then, like, again, people don't understand how much, like, you're not doing anything physically per se, but just how
that
much that
cognitive load.
wears you down. Like, it gets to the end
Yeah.
of a teaching week
Yeah.
for me, I'm cactus.
Yeah. And some of these kids are really struggling. They're struggling at home. Their parents don't understand it. There's a lot of parents. So if you've got a child with ADHD, there's a really high chance there's a parent that hasn't, is probably undiagnosed if they're our age, particularly women. But also a lot of the dads. I did some work for a psychologist, and I worked with this family, and one of the things the dad said, he come in, sat down, and goes, right, how many hidings is it going to take to beat this out of him? I just sat there, and I was like, take a breath. Don't react. Respond. And I can be a little bit sarcastic. And my response was, well, it's a little bit like stupidity. You can't beat that out of someone. And I knew that was going to either go really good or really bad. And he went, it's worked well for me. My dad gave me a few hidings, and I was like, are you sure that worked well?
Yeah.
Like just that. If that's the mentality. Some of these kids are dealing with a lot of shit.
Well, that statement means it didn't work well, doesn't it? And again, that must be very frustrating for you. Like, even though, like I said, so much more widely accepted than a generation ago. Like, I often say this: how many kids in martial arts did we miss out on because we just deemed them as they were little turds, they were unruly, they didn't listen, and then they ended up not coming back? How many amazing martial artists did we miss out on because we just didn't understand them?
Yeah, we had a 40th anniversary for our club quite a few years ago now. We have it 10 years ago. And we had Bob Jones and Billy Monet and come to that. And Chief did this. Chief is Bob Jones, for those listening that don't know who he is. He spoke about the success that we'd had working with kids, and particularly kids who are autistic.
Yeah.
And at the time, he said, we don't know why martial arts has been effective and why it's helped. We just know it has. So there's been research now on martial arts and neurodivergent kids. And you don't have to look far in martial arts to look at all the neurodivergent people that are often undiagnosed.
Oh, man. I always, you've just got to look at YouTube, and you'd have a field day. You'd just be looking, going, yep.
Peter, so because both my kids were diagnosed as well, because it's highly, highly heritable. He would sit back and he'd start saying, do they know they're one of your tribe? And I'd be like, shh, can't say that. You've never been wrong. He actually said to a psychiatrist that diagnosed one of the kids, I think I'm a bit of a pro at picking this up in people. And I was like, oh my God, you can't say that. Like, that's so embarrassing. But the psychiatrist actually said, I actually agree. I think you would pick this up in most people before most GPs, because GPs aren't generally trained in it. Probably before a lot of psychologists and most people, because you've got 3 very different people in your household with it. I have, a brother that's diagnosed. I've got a brother that's very highly likely has it, but doesn't want to do anything about it. And my dad, he looks at it and goes, that's me though. I'm 100% sure that's me. I've got that. So, he's never been wrong, but I had to ask him to stop asking people if they have it.
I guess because, I mean, like, especially to the older generation, it's still fresh. It's still like, what exactly is this? But yeah, God, I think
it's just a different way of thinking, and I think it's more about, we talk about like social constructs and majority versus minority. For all this time, the majority that's ruled has thought that they're neurotypical, and a lot of them aren't. But they've gone with this thing that this is the way we should do it, and this is the way the brain should work and how people should act. And that just doesn't work for a lot of people.
And I think,
and then we see a lot of footballers now that have been diagnosed, and they've had some pretty bad off-field behaviour, and it doesn't take long to work out that there's something else going on. And some of that can be based around trauma, and we won't go on to because that's another passion area of mine. I don't want to go on a tangent. But, there's a reason that that's all happening, and they don't have those skills. So people with ADHD and autism, they really lag behind anywhere sort of 3 to 5 years in those executive function skills. So
and like you said, sorry, keep going.
When we can get people to realize that they might lag in those skills, but neurotypical people can lag in other skills, and we look at them and go, come on, when are you going to catch up?
Yeah. And as we have said before, and as you said before, working with young kids who have accepted who they are, and how already as a young kid developing strategies of how to manage it, like when they feel that the walls are starting to close in, that's certainly going to help them later in life, because as we have spoken about before, when people are grown adults are exhibiting this behavior, but then blaming what they have as the reason for it, learning how to manage it is a whole different thing, isn't it? And that's probably something like that you could see, like, you're doing that because of that, but then you're also not doing anything to manage that as well.
Yeah, that's teaching them those skills. And then, it's teaching parents also and partners that to help them, you have to learn to co-regulate. So you have to regulate yourself first before trying to attempt to calm a child or another adult. So telling them to simply calm down never works.
You're just exacerbating it. Yeah. Very, very interesting. See, I told you that would be more than 7 minutes.
Which is one of the most interesting things the day that I was diagnosed was the psychiatrist said to me, probably the best thing you've ever done for yourself was martial arts. To help manage all of your symptoms.
Look, the amount of kids we have in here now, and like you were saying about Pete, I've had a couple of interactions with parents, and they come in here and they're just so, like, it's just this, I don't know, like it's just like a calm stream for them. Like it just slows everything down. They can just regulate. The world just looks different. But then, when a parent will come up and go, oh, so we went and got a diagnosis and blah, blah, blah. And I just look at them and go, oh, really? Like it's, for us, it's like plain as day, but it's just, again, like that acceptance thing. And I guess that would be hard for a parent too, just, like to, It
gets really difficult particularly with girls. So you'll see as school girls will often mask a lot. So they'll be looking around at the other kids, looking what's socially acceptable, and they will be trying so hard to fit in and do that. But then that's exhausting. So the minute they get home into a safe space, that's when they will just melt down. Yeah. And then you've got teachers saying, but I'm not seeing this. I don't see that at school. And they're the kids that are getting missed. Happens with boys too, particularly boys with inattentive type ADHD, because they're not so physically hyperactive. So they're the ones that get missed. And that's the sad part, because they struggle big time.
It sounds like you're doing some pretty amazing things. But let's get on to question 2. 3 reasons you get out of bed every morning, and you're not a dairy farmer, so it's not too early.
No, I don't have a gym anymore. To go to the toilet, to let the dogs out, and then just do what I need to do and I love to do. Yeah.
Now, so reason number 1, 3 reasons you get out of bed every morning for the dogs. Now, the dogs are a big focal point for you. What dogs have you got?
So I have got 2 Bernese mountain dogs and a Moodle or a Maltese cross poodle. She's the eldest. She's the boss. So Sasha, she's my oldest Bernese mountain dog, and she's been working with me. So she's been coming into schools and amazing at teaching kids how to self-regulate and calm themselves. And then of Dax, he's a COVID baby, so doesn't have the best social skills. A little bit chaotic. The breeder tells me the more chaotic they are and full on, the smarter they are. So we're holding on.
So he's a genius.
Sasha, we've just had to retire her though. She's 9.5, and she's got cancer, so that's a bit sad. We were told only 5 weeks ago that she only had about 3 to 4 weeks left. I was like, oh, let's not underestimate this dog. I get that she's got these tumors and, I get that. But I said, I don't know, she's always sort of shown us that she's a bit tougher than we think she is. So we know that her time's near, but she's doing pretty well at the moment.
Oh, that's good to
And I
hear.
think she absolutely loves the beach. So we're down here and it's like she gets this new lease of life.
Yeah.
So we're making the most of this holiday. So this last year we called it the Year of Sash, and we did a lot of things, doing things, taking her to the beach, doing different stuff, and yeah. So it will be a very sad day when that day comes. Unfortunately, it will be sooner rather than later. But she's a huge part of my life.
Yeah, it's all the days prior to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you got another 2 reasons you get out of bed every morning?
Well, work, because I love what I do, and I don't want. I mean, I like to sleep in every so often, but I don't really want to waste everything. I don't want to waste all my time.
Yeah, because we've again had this conversation. You've always been squeezing 25 hours of stuff into 24 hours of a day. Now that you're not doing the PT and that sort of thing, or you're at the beach, does the temptation of a sleep in happen? And then you go, nah, I got shit to do.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a sleep in. So the other day, I think I was up about 8 o'clock. And it might have been 9 o'clock another day. But then I was up this morning early because we went for a bike ride. Went down to the beach and rode around. And I can't do that on the farm.
No.
I mean, you can go for a ride, but it's not the same. I smell like shit. It's just not the same.
It's not the same. It is nowhere near
and
the
all
same.
these people out here are up early. Like everyone's up about doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's nice too. So, yeah. So I think everyone used to say you just do so much. To me, I wasn't doing as much as what everybody thought, but I think that was just normal for me.
I think
but when I stop, people don't see me when I stop. When I stop, I crash, and that's it. It's like I shut down.
No, I can empathize with that. I think they don't see the behind the scenes of when you're when you're just like down, when you're just down. And I think you would be like me where, there are so many days that you finish and you feel like people see and look like you've done so much, but in your head you're going, I got nothing done today. I got about 10% of what I wanted to do done. I had one of those days yesterday.
Yeah. And then there's emails, and then when you got the gym, there's programs to write, and now it's just different again. And I've returned to study, so I'm now doing my master's. So that's making sure I fit in time to do that. So I'm on a break at the moment, but that'll start back soon, and that's a whole other ball game that's completely different to doing a bachelor's. It's a bit more intense.
God, I can only imagine. All right, now, this will be interesting. 2 guilty pleasures that you have.
Yeah, loved this question. And I really, because I, like to get into something when I'm reading about it, I'm not a big fan of the whole thing on guilty pleasures because, well, a guilty pleasure is what we call a social construct. And I actually not long ago wrote a paper on the social constructions of difference. Social constructs, again, this is what the majority says should be accepted. Excuse the language, but I think, fuck that.
I go for it.
To do that these days. So, when I do something, I don't feel guilt for it. If I've worked hard to buy it, to spend time doing it, and it's something that's pleasing, I'm not guilty for it. I don't feel guilty at all. I give back to the community, so that takes away any kind of guilt. I give back in donating to charities. I don't have guilt for things that I do or buy or spend time doing.
It's funny you should and this was something we spoke about prior offline, but then I totally agree with what you're saying there, is that we have these things that, society has told us, you shouldn't eat a tub of ice cream every day. But you go, if I want to eat it, then I'm going to eat it. But then the secondary thing to that, and you're probably a good person to talk about this sort of stuff. The secondary thing to that is, I want to do this because I love doing it or whatever, but then what will people think of me if I do this all the time? Will they think different of me because I'm doing that, and then I'll be judged? That's obviously something that plays on people's heads too when it comes to guilty pleasures, hence why it's probably called a guilty pleasure.
And that there builds that whole cycle of shame. So, and shame is a really big thing for a lot of people. For people that are neurodivergent, it's a massive deal. You don't want people to see the things that you're not great at, that you're failing at, because often it's the most basic things in life. You can do the hard stuff really well. I had a lot of issues around shame and perfectionism. So now I've worked really hard to just completely upend everything and change all of that. So I just think the minute somebody, or you're starting to feel shame around something because of the way someone else is going to think about it, you have to think, are they the people that I really want in my life? Why am I trying to impress others? And why should I have to feel that way about it?
And
if
we've
it's a real guilt, like not a pleasure, but it's a guilt, then it's, well, if I'm feeling guilty for this, then why am I feeling guilty? What is it doing to somebody else that's causing me to feel the guilt? Yeah.
It's something that I know that I wrestle with too. Like even when I wanted to put this podcast out, and again, we did the COVID conversations prior to this, which people can see, and putting this out was even like, dare I say it, one of the first things that popped in my head. They're going to think, here he goes again. He's doing this, he's doing that. But then if you want to do it, then do it. And like you said, the people who are passing judgment at you, the people who are knocking you or bagging you or stabbing you in the back, like I said, they're not people that you need in your life.
Yeah. People always make comments, and I just sort of question, where's that coming from for them? What's causing them to feel that way? And it's sort of, we all can have that time where we sit and have to think about our own thoughts and feelings. But we've got, I think you asked about favorite quotes, and one of mine is to not believe everything you think.
Yeah.
So just because you're thinking that someone's going to think that doesn't mean it's true. We all get that. There's cognitive biases and all of these things that can stop us doing the things that we want to do.
There must be so much stuff now with your study, and like you said, your own brain as the private experiment, that you must just go, that's that.
Oh yeah,
that makes sense. Just these constant aha moments.
Yeah.
But that must also give you peace too. Like you go, like I said,
sure.
I'm not a freak. I'm not an idiot. Like we said before, like this is just how my brain works.
Yeah. People would always say to me, but why? And my first thing was, well, why not? It didn't worry me. It doesn't matter if you don't want to do it, but if it's going to work for me, that's cool. And I remember when I started the ADHD and executive function coaching, there was a girl I know, she said, well, I don't think that's a business that's going to go very well. You can't really go and ask people to do that. I went, what do you mean I can't ask people to do that? I'm going to put it out there. And, she just said, I just don't think it's a business that's going to work. I don't see a need for it. And I'm like,
here we are.
Yeah. If somebody had asked me 2 years ago how I thought this business was going to go, I'd say I'd plod along and I'd do okay. I would never have thought I'd be able to say that I'd be booked out over 6 months ahead of time.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's more and more coaches getting that training and coming through. So it's really specific training. But and that's not to big note myself. That's just to say, don't listen to everybody else. You just got to follow
like we said with guilty. Yeah, I mean, like we said with guilty pleasures, you're challenging social mindsets more than anything else. Is this isn't the way we have to think. What if we think this way?
Yeah. I've never been really great at following rules. I've always been really good at questioning them though. Yeah. I'll bend them. Don't always I get why they're there for sure, for safety and for whatever. But if it's to hold somebody else back, that's where I've always had an issue, even as a little kid.
Well, the term I heard recently was be curious.
Yes. That's a big thing when you do coach training.
As much as it gets to us as parents, when your kids ask why, don't shut them down, because they're being curious. They want to learn.
Absolutely.
As much as it frustrates you sometimes, everything is why, but they want to know, which is hard sometimes.
My kids are very, very curious. So Sophie would always ask the big questions. Why are there men's and women's toilets? Why do girls wear pink? Why do boys wear blue? That's where, even before I did a psych degree many years ago, I had to start learning about social constructs and all of that because I had to give her an answer. I wasn't going to lie to her and say because that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Because my luck, she wanted to learn it and then taught me.
Well, that's the thing. Like you said, they teach us so much about ourselves. They're like, actually, why is that? Again, like, the social constructs. Why do boys wear blue and girls wear pink? It's funny. We in our new merch, I've finally given in, for want of a better word, and we've now got pink t-shirts. The amount of blokes that are buying pink t-shirts is ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's the people that struggle with those things the most are the adults, because that's what we've been raised to believe.
It's just what you do.
That's why we have to sit back and say, no offense to anyone's parents, but historically, families, parents, adults haven't always had the same understanding of things, and they've just told us what they've been taught from their families and believed that to be true. So we have to get out there and search and do something different, because that's what's held people back, and it's caused a lot of problems worldwide. Like, you see your dad or your mum do something one way and you think that's the way it should be done, and that's not always a great thing. Sometimes it's a wonderful thing, but it's not always the best.
And you could probably say we're the generation that is got the biggest responsibility to institute that change.
Yeah,
it's kind of the buck stops with us.
Yeah. We've we've got to teach that to our kids. Yeah,
we do.
Don't follow what I do. Forge your own way.
Be curious. Number 4. One thing that you bought that has literally made you happy every day after.
That would be Sasha, my older Bernese.
Yep. What attracted you to that breed of dog? It's not something you see every day.
No, you don't. There's not a lot of them. I had a border collie when I was...
Because they're massive. They're a big dog.
They're a big dog, yeah. And I just always loved that tricolour. I don't know. I'd fallen in love with them when I'd seen them in TV shows and that many years ago, but I never knew what they were called. I just kept trying to explain to people what I loved. I'd say, it's a border collie. And I had a border collie, but they weren't the same. Anyway, I eventually found them, and so that would be probably the thing that I thought that's made me the happiest. And my camera gear. I love photography, so my camera's probably equally the other thing.
That's been a very active hobby of yours over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Is that a bit of Tania time where you just break that out? Yeah.
And that's why, my phone, I always take photos every day. I would easily take photos every single day.
Yep.
So.
It's funny, isn't it? I had this conversation with Ivy on holidays. I wanted to take a photo of her and I at the beach doing something or other, and she went to crack it and said, I don't want a photo. And I said, mate, okay, but just hear me out. I said, my dad and I, like when he was alive, I said, guess how many photos I have of my dad and I? And she went, I don't know. And I said, I've got 8. I have 8 photos of my dad and I in the same frame. I said, that's why I have 44,000 photos on my phone, because I just, I've got a photo of like so much stuff. And I think that's the thing we forget now. Like, when I was racing BMX, I think I've got half a dozen photos of 10 years of BMX racing. Back then, like, photos was such a process. But now if we have the chance to take those photos, how many moments did we miss? And we all say it's up here, but then I'm sure you would agree, your memory is not as good as it was 10 years ago. But take photos. Take a photo of anything.
Sophie's always said that she doesn't have a lot of childhood memories, which was crazy to me because, I would remember so many things that she did. And every so often she'd say, I remember doing that. My younger brother was the same. He'd say, I don't have a lot of childhood memories. And my dad was the same. But when I look at those 3 and the way that their brain works, they are on the go all the time. They don't stop, sit back and reflect on the things that they've done. They're just on to the next thing. Yeah.
And that's
Whereas Josh and I
probably,
are really reflective.
well, that's probably a thing too
And
with again what goes on in our brains. You know, there's no time to just stop and take it all in.
no, and if you don't sit back and look at pictures of what you've or where you've been or people you've been with or what you've done, it makes it really hard to anchor that in your brain. So one of the things that we said to her when she went overseas was, would it help you to take a lot more photos and videos? And then when you look back, it's going to help anchor those memories. And she's been doing that. She said it's been great. It's made a big difference. So if anyone out there that struggles to remember things, start taking photos and talk about them. Don't just take them and not look at them again. Sit back, but also talk about your experiences. That's something Josh and I have always done.
Yeah.
And
It's recalling it. Yeah, it's funny you say, like, every now and then, like my iPhone will say, "Oh, you need to clear some storage and whatever." So I go to start going through, and I go, "I don't want to delete that. And I want to keep that. I want to keep that." So I was like, I can't even delete 50 photos off here. Like, which ones do I not want anymore? It's really hard.
Yeah.
You know, because every one of them holds importance for me.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. When we did when we do our first degree grading in Zendakai, you do a project. So for mine, I built a photo frame and I just did a massive big photo board and of my journey, and had a lot of other people obviously in it. So because I was taking photos at martial arts events back in 1993, 1994, like imagine the film.
And there's like the gold, like, you know, and again, who doesn't get to our age and just love looking through old photos?
Oh, exactly, yeah.
You
And
know?
I think for me, one of the things that I've always loved, like when I would go to any event, but martial arts, I would take photos of those things, and you know, my cameras would be Wi-Fi, so they would they'd transfer to my iPad phone, and I could just airdrop them to people. I think at camp one, you do turn your airdrop on, and there's something like 250 photos ended up on your phone.
It's like, holy shit.
In the morning.
And there's my morning going through them, which is great, you know. And again, we still have those photos. Like I said, you know, there's a photo that was taken with your camera of you that's up on our wall, you know. So you're famous. All right, number 5. One thing everyone thought you were crazy doing, but did it anyway, and it paid off. I think you've kind of almost touched on that before, or is there something else?
Really? I think, well, if I took it back to my dog, so when she was 3, she got really, really sick with meningitis. And people thought we were crazy for taking her to specialist vets. And, you know, a lot of people are like, if your dog gets sick, you just put it down.
Yeah.
But for me, that wasn't an
That's a
option
farm mentality, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. And whereas I was like, well, hang on, let's exhaust all our options. And, you know, 6 odd years later, she's still going. So, you know, but I had to, even my hairdresser, he was like, you know, mate, when's enough? And I was just like, you know what, you and I have had a really great relationship. If you want to keep it,
let's change the subject.
Yeah, he goes, got it, no worries.
I think that's you know, I mean, I growing up too, like I would remember that same sort of thing. Like, you know, if the dogs on the farm were if they weren't any good anymore, there was only a couple of other options for them. But it's so people, like, pets become part of that family. And it's hard. Like, what price do you put on their life?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we saw the big difference in our kids when we got that dog. Josh used to come home from school and he'd go into his room and he'd do homework or he'd play computer games, and you know, he didn't come out until sort of like dinner time. The minute we got that dog, he'd come home, put his school bag in his room, he'd come out and he would just sit with her, with us, and it just completely changed the way we all interacted.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
And that's again why they're so good for you know, like you said, you've been using Sasha and that sort of thing just as just bringing people together as well.
I've taken her into the school a couple of times when as we've walked in, we've seen teachers outside where some kids have done runners, and there's a school next door to it, and they're in the other school grounds, and they're trying to coax them back into the primary school grounds, and they're saying, "Oh, look, here comes Sasha," and I've just handed the lead and said, "Do you want her?" And they're like, "Thank you," and taken her off. Or there's been teachers or the vice principals come and asked if they could borrow her to help calm some kids that were really upset.
Isn't that crazy?
You see that in action, and you think, man, that's pretty unique.
We forget about all these other things that pets give us, don't they?
Yeah. So I think that would be the main one. There's not a lot of other things, and if people tell me I'm crazy for doing something, it's more likely to make me want to do it.
I think there's that thing too, like, yeah, I mean, but as we know, there's things that make you money and there's things that bring you happiness. And I think the ultimate goal is something that brings you happiness, that, okay, so I make money out of this too. I mean, for both of us, if we wanted to be millionaires, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But we're doing something that makes us happy. It makes other people happy. And, it's paying off for you.
Yeah. Not long ago, Pete made a comment to me and said, that's not what most people would do. And I just did that whole, like...
I'm not most people.
You went, yep, got it. Don't know why I even said that.
You're right. I'm sorry. Stop.
What say to me.
There goes my mouth talking before my brain has a consultation with it.
It's generally me, but yeah, as soon as he said it, you could see he was just like, why did I say that?
Takes a great man to admit when he's wrong.
He's a good man. Yep.
Number 6. 4 things you cannot live without, animate or inanimate.
This was a good one. So obviously the basics of food, air, water. I'd probably say internet.
Okay.
Yeah. Be a big struggle these days to live without internet.
Well, you basically did that's how you work. That's how you learn. It's how we're talking right now.
Yeah. It's literally opened up my life in major ways. Obviously, and I did my psych degree. I'm doing my master's online. I have to go to Melbourne for it as well, for like weekends. But it just would have made... I wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff that I've done without the internet. And a GPS. Because I can't read a map. So GPS,
you sort of like do the rotation. Yeah.
Just cannot read a map. When I did my ADHD coach training and they said people with ADHD really struggle to read a map, I felt so validated, and I was like, yes. I'm not even going to waste my time trying anymore. But my life changed when GPS came in. I was like able to go to Melbourne on my own, didn't need anyone to navigate. It was just... So that would be something I'd still probably struggle without.
Okay. What else you got? Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
How it's funny, like how you just said, like the basics, food, shelter, clothing, whatever. It's funny how we bypass those. Like, you're the first person that I've interviewed in this podcast series that has even gone, well, there's
really?
that and that. But because, again, they're things that, and again, this is nothing to the previous guest, but it's not like, that's just stuff that we, and I talk to all the kids especially in classes, we just assume that's always going to happen, don't we? And like, can you live without it? Or like, if you don't have it, live without it. Like, okay, so we'd say internet. So if worse came to worse, we could still function day to day without internet, but you could not live without food, shelter, water, that sort of thing. So it's, again, social constructs, our interpretation, like what we see this as, like how literal do we take things. So yeah, that's interesting that you've given that answer.
Like, when I read that question, I was like, it's a good question. And I thought, obviously the first thing you want to say is, I couldn't live without my family. And this gets getting deep into that kind of question. But the reality is, at some stage we are going to live without a family member, which is sad, but that's the reality of life. So I was like, that seems so basic to say, I can't live without my family. I don't want to live without them, but the reality will be at some stage I will. So I was like, let's not go with that one. Let's just go with the other basics.
But it's good the way that you pick apart the questions. But like you said, you're picking apart that question. And it's like the guilty pleasures one, you pick it apart and you sort of go, well, that, that makes sense to me. Like I'm living without, I've had family members die, like, and I'm still here. So I think, that's again, it's how you view that question. I really like that. I like the way we looked at that. Number 7. If you were not doing what you are doing in life right now, what would have been option number 2?
I would say I'd probably be studying my master's full time.
Okay. Now,
Yeah. So
from a
I'm doing
kid who
in
wasn't
counselling.
really into school,
I was into school. It just wasn't great at it.
but you've had your head in a book for the greater part of your adult life.
Yeah.
Is it a passion to learn?
Yeah, it is. It stimulates my brain, and my brain needs stimulation because it gives me dopamine.
Because
So,
you would find as we get older, like if we talk about somebody that's set in their ways, that generally refers to an older person. So like you're around the same age as me and you're still learning new things. That again keeps us younger, keeps us fresher.
Oh, yeah.
But do you is that something that you probably see people like, friends you went to school with and that sort of thing, that's just non-existent for some people?
A lot of people say, I don't know how you can be bothered. I'm just not interested. I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to be interested, but that's your call. And I think I love to learn new stuff, and I love to be challenged. And I've learned stuff that's what I've learned since things have changed. Like we learn more about different things, and you've got to learn to change the way you view it and see it, because evidence now shows us something completely different. At the end of last year, when I was doing my last unit for my master's, I'd go to Melbourne. We do what we call an intensives weekend. So you spend 2 days. It's like 8:30 to 5:30 in the classroom, and the other people in these classes have either they've done psychology degrees or they're medical nursing backgrounds. There's one guy who was a GP and a psychologist. He's done both those, and now he wants to do counselling and psychotherapy. So it's a really amazing mix of people. So you're learning a lot, and it's a really diverse group. And that subject was on cultural diversity. So one of the things we had to do was they said, imagine this classroom is the world. This is, let's say, a globe of the world. We want you to go and stand in the country where your grandparents were born. I was like, oh, well, mine's probably going to be pretty full because my grandparents were born in Australia. It's 2 people in Australia.
Yeah.
And I just was blown away. It was just amazing, that cultural diversity, and just to see the differences and everyone being so excited about it to learn more. And I think in a small town, you don't sort of get those conversations happening very often.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like you spent 90% of your life living in a small town. That's something that you would probably see again with people you grew up with or that sort of thing. And I have it growing up in a small town. I was, I'll go back there every now and then. And again, I love my mates, but there's that small town mentality can sometimes get the better of people. It does, like I said, a generation ago, like you were born in a town and you stayed in a town. And now we've got all these people from, God, like I said, what is an Australian these days?
Yeah.
What nationality?
You're drawn to people with similar interests. So I find, I've got quite a few friends that have been diagnosed with ADHD. They say you find your tribe, but I find you're drawn to people with a similar interest, and you will search out people who are going to, stimulate your brain in certain ways that you're going to have those conversations with. And I've done that very much the last probably 15 to 20 years of my life, really sought out those people. So, and I think, and also traveling a lot.
Yeah. And I think for you, if you're learning is, like you would already be seeing in the amount of time that you've been studying psych, you would already see there's evolutions in what you probably learned in the first year compared to what you're learning now. Like everything's getting constantly reinvented.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things I learned probably about myself was did like a character strength survey, and every time I do one over the years, one of the highest strengths I'd have was social intelligence. So this ability to adapt to different social settings and fit into these different groups. But then when I started to work with someone and pull all that apart, I was like, but that leaves me exhausted. I find that one of the most draining things. And then that was actually a learned behavior for me. Like, so whether that was me masking and learning how to fit in from a young age, we don't know. Something I became really, really good at. So I don't know whether it was something natural for me or whether my dad's very good at it. So I don't know, but it is something that I've had to like really sort of dig in and pull apart and go, is this natural for me or is it actually causing me to be more exhausted when I do it? Do I just have to scale back how often I do that?
I think before we go on to the next question, I think like you're talking about, like you were diagnosed ADHD later in life. You're learning all these behavior traits that you've had since whenever. What am I trying to say here? When you say you've had to go back and pull it apart and all that sort of stuff in regards to that, that would be incredibly confronting, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Really confronting. Yeah. You're learning that you're
How do you even begin to do that?
To fit into a society.
Like, you know, if you know that you say a certain thing and then you know that you behave a certain way, and then like every time you say it, like, oh fuck, did it again. Oh fuck, did it again. Like, you know, like that initial. Now you've recognised. You go, God, I do that all the time. What's that? Sorry.
Yeah. That's where that shame cycle kicks in for a lot of people.
Right.
Because when they walk away, they go, why don't I do that? You know, so they end up trying to behave in a way that's not natural for them. So particularly a lot of teenage girls, I'll work with them, they'll go, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, you know what? You didn't do anything wrong. There's no need to apologise in these sessions. There's no judgment here.
We have it.
It's just that they've been apologising for so long.
It's just the default, isn't it? We have it. I've trained a lot of kids, and one thing they always do is when you're getting them to do something, and like you say, "Oh, keep going. You're doing well." Or, you need to do this, and the default will be, "Oh, I'm trying. I said, "I know you're trying, but you just, you know, let's keep going. But it's just that, you know." And one kid even said it once. He got quite emotional. He said to me, I don't mean to say that. Don't get mad at me for saying that. I said, I'm not getting mad at you. I'm just saying it's okay. Like, you trying is good. That's a good thing. It's just trying to reconstruct their brain.
So these are the neurodivergent kids you're working with? These are the neurodivergent kids? So we know that, so particularly ADHD, so kids up to the age of 12 often have, they say, around 20,000 more negative messages than their neurotypical peers.
Wow.
So, and often those negative messages can be, you need to try harder.
Yeah.
And what that means is that they're trying so hard to do it in a neurotypical way, it doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
Teach them in a neurodivergent way, like there's another way to do it that will work and we'll get the same outcome, but it'll be easier for you to understand. Perfect. But the neurotypical kids could easily do it if we taught them in the same way as we teach neurodivergent kids.
Yeah. Because again, that classic,
teachers haven't been taught that.
Or that classic statement, you're doing it wrong, or that's wrong. That's the worst thing you can say, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, we say all the time, they're saying, they keep telling me to stand still. And I know how hard that is. Martial arts has been one of the hardest things for me to learn how to stand still. I don't think there's ever been a time I've been completely still. No one sees how much I squeeze my legs under my gi or clench my toes and push my tongue to the roof of my mouth and find a way to have to keep moving to concentrate. Fidgeting equals focusing. And just trying to change people's understanding of that is really, really big. If you want that child to concentrate, don't force them to sit still. And that was probably one of the big unravelings for me. In primary school, I would sit there, so I would have my pen, I would be doodling, I'd be twirling my hair, and I'd be kicking the table. And I'd be listening, but I looked like I was in a world of my own.
Yeah,
but
right.
The teacher couldn't stand it. It's frustrating for everyone else. So she'd say, Tania, stop twirling your hair, stop kicking the table, put your pen down, just sit on your hands. So I'd sit on my hands, and then I can't remember anything after that. That was actually very confronting and really emotional when I worked that out with the psychologist. It was like, what the hell? Like that that was forcing me to just do something that was completely against the way I was meant to learn.
And like you said, it shut you down.
So yep. So now one of the first things I say, I had a teacher who I worked pretty closely with. She said, "Look, the student, he's just not listening. He's just drawing on his whiteboard when I'm talking." And I went, "Is he doing the work after you've said go do the work?" She said, "Yes, he is." I went, "Okay, when you go back, maybe have that conversation one-on-one and ask him why he's doing that, because I'd say it's his form of fidgeting." And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." And that kid doing so much. He's unbelievable. He's one of the smartest kids, in the class.
That's what I mean.
But he just has to do something a bit different to others.
How many of these kids have we missed out on? Number 8. One time you have backed yourself when everything was saying to just give up.
That kind of came back to the number 5, when everyone thought what I was doing was crazy, but I did it anyway. Like a good job here, but I don't know. I think I shut a lot of people out when they're telling me something I don't want to hear. It's in I'm giving up.
Yeah.
Training for my 4th Dan was one of those times it was getting really hard because I was struggling big time. That was just before I was diagnosed, and I was trying to learn weapons, the 2, forms. I had to travel to Melbourne so often, and I remember someone saying, "Is it worth it? Like the stress that it's causing you?" And I was just like, "It will be when I do it."
But it's a question that you ask yourself from time to time, I guess.
Yeah. It's just, how bad do I want it? Do I want it enough to keep putting up with everything takes a bit of work, and nothing's meant to be comfortable all the time, but it's the stress and how much. And probably one of my best friends who got me into martial arts, she said, "I'm worried about you because you go through these cycles every so many years where you just push and push and you nearly hit a wall, but you just pull yourself back." But she said, "I'm not seeing you pull back, and I'm just so worried that you are going to crash so bad." And she was spot on.
Funny how much people know us better than we know ourselves, or maybe we're just we put it to the side, but it just stands out. The amount of I've had that situation too, and when something happens, I go, "Yeah, I'm not surprised." So
I saw that coming. Yeah.
What
I do tend to listen to people more now.
Do you find by, like you said, like if someone that isn't on your team or isn't supporting you, do you find, like you said, those situations are good for you to work out? Like you said, you were referring to your tribe, who is on your tribe and who isn't on your tribe. Because like I said, you're always going to get these people go, "I think that's a dumb idea," and then you go, "Okay, well, I guess we're not connecting as much as we have been in the past."
Yeah. Can still be friends. They just don't have to support everything I do. Yeah. Most of my friends are like, if I tell them hey, I've got an idea. Actually, I think it was you or Matt Ball. It was you after Queensland, when I came to you about the trip to the Dominican Republic. I was like, "Hey, this idea," and you went, "Oh shit."
I need to sit down.
Look, meet at the bar because I might need to sit down for this one.
Yeah. Is there a pub around here?
I was like, "No, this will be great." And you went, "Mm-hmm."
Okay. Where's that pub? I need beer or coffee.
I can remember that. It was quite funny. And I was like, "No, it'll be really good." But yeah, it was that whole "Oh shit." Or what does she want from me? But I was like, that actually made me stop and go, "Do I say that a lot? Hey, I've got this idea." And when I asked a few friends, they went, "Oh yeah, when you've got an idea and you want to share it and you want people to be involved, you go, 'Hey, guess what? I've got this idea.'" And we either know this is going to be a lot of fun or it's going to be a bit of work.
It's this real loaded question.
But I only ask people I think will be interested.
Oh, like I said, you ask your tribe, you ask the people you respect. You wouldn't walk past someone in the street and go, "Hey, I got an idea." Like,
You want to come here?
yeah, like fucking run the other way. Question 9. 3 pieces of advice to people that are finding reasons to not back themselves, to instead back themselves.
Instead of giving advice, because a lot of people don't like that. They don't want to be told. They don't want advice. They just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, what's the thing that you think is holding you back?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it an issue? What's one thing that you could change that would take you one step closer to doing what you want to do?
Yeah.
That would be one of the things I was thinking about. And I learned like a sort of sequence of questions to ask when things are really tough for people, when they trying to decide what to do. And I actually used this on Josh, our son, when he was doing his masters and didn't want to do it anymore. I knew I couldn't go in with that mum of, you'll be right. Just do it. You're doing so great at it. Like, you'll be right. And I'll share it. I'm happy to share if anyone it helps them use it themselves or with their kids. You could see it was really eating away at him. And I said to him, how much is this weighing you down? And he went, really fucking heavy. Mum, it's really heavy. I said, okay, so how do you need to lighten the load? And he said, I need to not do the masters anymore. I said, okay, what do you need to do to make that happen? And his answer was, I need to go talk to my supervisor and I need to just pull out of this. I went, all right, cool. When are you going to do that? He went, actually, I can make that appointment tomorrow. I went, great. Okay. What else do you need from me to help you out here? He went, oh no, I'm cool now, but I know what I need to do. Had I gone in with mum mode, it just would have been completely different. But also, for somebody that really struggles to follow through, for him, that wouldn't have happened straight away. But he ended up being able to answer it himself. I didn't have to give him any advice. He was able to come forward and say, this is what I need to do. And he created a plan with an intention.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think most people probably need to do, is they don't necessarily need advice. They need to talk and just thrash things out.
Okay. Do you have any other sort of, I guess, questions to answer people's questions in those sorts of regard? Like instead of using the term advice, is there another couple of things that you'd think about and that sort of stuff? Because you've done some pretty amazing things that I guess a lot of people may have thought, well, I wouldn't go so far to say stupid, but weren't the best ideas, or and you've probably been successful in areas where people have gone, because again, country town, you ran a very successful personal training business. Now you're doing this, which, 20 odd years ago, this vocation probably didn't exist. And, as you said, there's been people that have gone, oh, you're actually going to, is this actually a good idea? There's plenty of other people out there. And I'm like, you can make a living doing anything now. What would you say to those sorts of people that are teetering on that fence or wondering if they should just do whatever the norm is?
If it's something that you really, really want, you have to just think about you for a second.
Yeah.
Put out everybody else's energy and put out everyone else's comments, because they're the thing they're the thing that'll stop you more than anything. So it's a mindset thing for sure. So that mental chatter is really, really big. So when you start to hear the negative things, like I shouldn't, or I can't, or I just don't think I can, that's where you go, stop that, hang on. That's something else telling me this. What is it that I truly want?
Yeah.
So whatever we tell ourselves, we will believe, whether it's true or not. You start to believe the bullshit story you tell yourself. So as soon as that sort of negativity creeps in, that's one thing I've learned, is to stop it and go, hang on, where's that coming from? And what's the feeling I'm getting? So stop thinking about just being in your head and start thinking about what you're feeling inside, because that's one of the biggest things.
And this is a thing that I keep coming back to, because you're probably so now in tune with what's going on in your brain and how everything's working. I use the term, you've got that ability to catch it now. You can catch it and go, I'm doing it again. Okay, right. Okay, let's break this down. Whereas probably however long ago you wouldn't have caught it and it would have blown up in your face potentially.
Yeah. Yep. I did a workshop with grade 5 and 6 kids last year at a wellbeing day. It was called Flip the Switch on Your Negative Self-Talk. And it's like, as soon as you hear that negativity, on whether you're starting to put yourself down, even if you're starting to put someone else down, catch it.
Yeah.
Ask where that's coming from.
Because that's the other thing we need to be conscious of. Like, we're putting ourselves down, but then are we, like we said before, people's opinions of us and all the rest of it. Do we do that just to make ourselves feel better or to hide how we're really feeling about ourselves?
Yeah. And there's always been, Australia's renowned for tall poppy syndrome.
Yep.
Like, you start to do well, I better stop here, I better slow this down, I better not talk about that because everyone will think I'm big noting myself. And I think I said it earlier on, I'm not saying that to big note myself. And it's sad that we have to preface things with that because
it's sad, yeah.
That's how our society works. Yeah. Like you go on to something to be asked about things and you want to share it and you hope it helps someone else, but it's not because you're trying to big note yourself. Yes, there's people that like to do that, but most population don't. And we want to hear about their stories. Like that's what helps some people decide the change they want to make.
Putting something up on our socials, as I've always said, there's a difference between big noting yourself and being proud of yourself. I think often those two get confused.
Yeah. Somebody I heard was in a group situation, and there was a smart ass comment said to someone. I went, and they said, "Oh, do you love yourself much?" to this person, and I was like, "Whoa!" And that person just shut down, and I was like, "Yeah, stuff this. I'm going to say something." And I was like, "Hey, no, I want you to keep going, and I hope you do love yourself enough to share that with everybody else." And I looked at that person. I went, "Why would you say that to someone? That's if you don't love yourself, we were kids, that's a bad thing."
When we were teenagers, like that would be a derogatory comment. If you turned up, whatever, you love yourself. So good, because quite often no one else does. So I've got to do that.
But it's terrible to watch that person just shut down because you don't know that what sort of situation they were in at home. Who knows? But to say that to someone, I just was like, wow, what's so negative for you that you have to say that?
And it might have taken them so long to just get the guts to say it, and then they shut down.
Yeah, and we were encouraging that conversation to encourage them to say it and see them light up, and then for someone to shut that down, that's just wrong. Yeah.
It's funny.
And people do it, and sometimes they don't realize how negative they are. Yeah.
And it's all it's all these words, like we said about the generations, like words that we used, all those years ago that were fine. But now it's like you just, and again, I'm saying this to older people that I work with now and in my own family. I'm like, you can't say that. You just can't say that to somebody anymore. That must be something. And again, you working with young kids, that's you're stopping the cycle.
With, disabilities, and it's like I have to catch people and say, you can't say that. That's just derogatory. It's putting people down. And you might have said that 20 years ago, but you can't say that now. We know better. When you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
So if you know it and you don't change, then that's on you. And they're not generally the people I want to be around.
That's exactly it. All right. Question 10, last one. A quote to live by.
I think my big one is don't believe everything you think.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because the minute you start to believe something that's not true, and it's to try and protect yourself to not do something that you let yourself down and you just don't follow through. So I think it's that's a big one for me.
Do you think our brains get in the way of us being the best people we can be?
I think it's a good one. I think the other one would be there's always, you're one change away from making a difference is probably the other one, I think.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
And I guess probably on those two quotes, the biggest thing that holds us back from being all we can be is often ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. Mindset. Yeah, ourselves. Yep.
If you'd have listened,
that comes back to one of the questions you had, worrying about what everyone else is thinking.
Oh, totally.
That's a big one. Yeah.
And you seem to have constantly wanted to defy. You've seemed to, whether you've done it instinctively or just passionately, you've just wanted to defy. It's almost like a pre-frame. If you tell me I can't do it, I'm gonna fucking do it.
Yeah, that has definitely been me, and that came back from that teacher telling me that I wasn't good enough. Yeah.
It's set in there.
And yeah, and some I was being asked in another podcast once about having to proving to people, that you're good enough. And I went, I actually don't need to prove that to anybody else.
Yeah.
I've proven to myself that I'm good enough to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's enough. I don't have to prove that to other people.
Yeah, good. I really love the way, like I said, when I first met you, you were doing something completely different, and now you're doing something completely different again. And I will say this, I can just see, and this is going to sound like I'm 80 years old, you've just got a real glow about you at the moment. Like you can, yeah, you've got your beach tan on. You can just see that you're happy. Like you can just see that what you're doing now, and that's not to say that you were miserable when I first met you, but just what you are doing now, you can see that this is just something that it's really striking a chord with you. You're really passionate about it, and you can see that, like I said, you just that interaction, you get a teacher a little bit emotional, you get a kid that makes this change, you just go, okay, today was worth getting out of bed for, today was a good day. You can just see that that's really something that you're wanting to do. And I think it's admirable, Tania, because you are not as much as you were probably even a few years ago, but society's still fighting a little bit of an uphill battle to get these kids and adults accepted.
That's a really interesting one, actually, because when I was diagnosed, I said to my kids and my husband, you know what, I'm going to take a year. I'm going to learn as much about this as I can. And, ADHD tend to hyperfocus, so I figured I'd really get into it. But when that year came, I couldn't still talk openly about it because so many people would try and shut it down and just say, it's a load of bullshit, or there's nothing wrong with you. And there isn't anything wrong with me, but I was struggling, and now I know why I was struggling. And I realized I had to learn so much more to educate people, but I had to also I had to educate doctors, and I had to educate people in those health fields because they didn't even get it.
Because it's
it was just crazy. So there's just a lot that can still be done, and I just think I'm always one. I like to just continue to improve myself. I don't tend to change jobs a lot. I don't go from one thing to another. I'm pretty committed when I get into something and I love it. I do it for a long time. Like I think I did pharmacy for around 12, 13 years, personal training for about 14 years. So maybe I have a 13 or 14-year itch, not a 7-year itch. I don't know. But I do something when I love it. I do it for a long time.
But the thing I would almost say then, to reword what you said, I think ever since I've known you, you've been doing the same thing. You've been a coach. Now you're just coaching something else. Or maybe you were always coaching this, but now you've, like I said, you're more educated now. You're formally understanding more. And we're like, the way we coach now, like you'd remember in martial arts, the way we coach now vastly different to the way we coached at the start. But we didn't know all the stuff. Like people go, oh, it was so wrong and this and that. Yeah, but we just didn't know. But now we know. Well, now we're educating.
Yeah. Instructors just parrot what they've been taught by their instructor.
Correct.
And I think
as our parents are parroting what their parents did.
Yeah. It's always, I've always said to my kids, be careful of who you look up to, because they don't always have the best and the right advice. But nobody's perfect. But the minute that advice continues to be bad advice, then you need to take a step back and evaluate if they're the people that you want around you or that you should be looking up to.
No, that's good.
If I was to say to them, don't look up to them and don't be around them, they would have just continued to be around them, because, again, no one wants to be told what to do.
Yeah, so, you have to pick it apart. Are these the people that are going to help me become the person that I want to be? Tania Rowan.
I remember.
Sorry, keep going.
Yep. Sam Solomon came down once to do a workshop, and he said to my kids, "Show me your 5 friends, and I'll show you how your life's going to turn out."
That's very true.
And they went, they're going 5 friends, and they've gone, that's okay, they're pretty good people. It really made them think, and I thought it's probably something that stuck with them. So
And that's the thing too. Like, you don't need. Well, this is a whole nother conversation. I say this to Lila. You know, I said you don't need to have a truckload of friends. You just need to have good friends.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
more friends is more problems,
So true.
and the friends that you have, like, you know, then there's the conversation. There's friends and there's mates. There's the people that you just, you know, they're who you base your. You are the person you are because of them.
Yep. Before we go, I've got a quick question for you.
Oh,
doing all your
yeah.
podcasts, what do you think's the thing you've learnt about yourself doing all these podcasts?
I think the thing that I'm learning, and it's funny, like, so prior to you, I'm learning how many more things I could be doing. And you and I both share that thing that we go, oh God, we need to do this, But that's the thing I've learned. So, for example, Graham Lloyd, who I interviewed yesterday, who will be the previous episode to you, he is very heavily involved. He's an old friend of mine. He's very heavily involved with Sea Shepherd and conservation. And he's a full vegan. And I went to give him a bottle of water in a plastic bottle. And he went, oh, look, sorry, mate, I don't drink water out of plastic. And I went, oh, okay. So I put the water back, and I said this in the interview. I said, so for the next whole hour and a bit that we did the podcast, I'm thinking in my head, amongst everything else, do I put a water fountain in here and make people bring their own water bottles and they do this? Because that's, you know, and again, so that's, I've learned, okay, maybe I could do a little bit more for the environment. With you, the amount of conversations that we've had in the past, and you've guided me on some situations that I've had with clients in here. I really enjoy the field that you do as well, and I really enjoy studying, and I go, I need to get back to that. I need to get back and reading and learning a little bit more. I think I love the fact with these podcasts that, you know, again, there's so many famous people that we never know. Like there'll be people that I'll interview, and I'm sure down the track will be famous, whatever that's defined as. But I think anyone that's changing a life every day, anyone that's impacting anyone every day, I think they need to be heard. And again, like you said, this whole, you know, people don't want to hear about me, or I'm not worth, you know, like I said, all those thoughts that go through their head. One that I hit up for an interview that will happen later on down the track. The first thing she said back to me is, I don't know what I've got to talk about. And I went, well, you do. You're a fantastic mother.
Let me draw that out.
Yeah, I'll get it out of you. You're a fantastic mother.
Yeah.
You're an amazing artist. So let's get to the bottom of it. But yeah, that's probably what I'm learning. I'm learning that there are so many people doing amazing things in the world that we know nothing about. And maybe if someone listens to your podcast and afterwards they go, fuck, that's me. That is me. That is me. And then they go through, and like you said, you've had some amazing turning points, and arguably had you not got diagnosed, would you be doing a job now that you are incredibly passionate about, and you can just probably turn around and go, I think I'll be doing this in one way or another until the day I die. This is my life's work.
Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't be doing this. Absolutely. Absolutely not.
So yeah. That's, I think, the answer to that question. It was good. It's good. I'm meant to be asking the questions, by the way.
I just thought I was interested. Yes.
I've already had someone say, so when are we interviewing you on your podcast? And I said, I don't know if people actually do that, but we'll see.
You know, you could do a round table. You could have a few different guests come in and ask questions.
Could do a little forum. That would be very interesting.
Yeah.
But
people from different parts of your life, different elements.
That would be actually very interesting because, it's funny. Like, I went to a party on Saturday night, and like some of my oldest friends, and it's funny, you slip back into that part of your life, and it's just so And then people here that I have trained with for 20 years, but You know, I've lived in Brisbane now longer than I lived in my hometown. So I've formed this entire new circle of friends. So, yeah. Interesting.
Very good.
Tania Rowan, thank you so much. I could keep talking to you. There's one topic that I wanted to talk to you about, but I reckon that's a whole new podcast in itself. I won't give away. We'll talk about that offline. But thank you so much for coming to me and talking to me from your beach house.
My pleasure.
And for those who are more interested in Tania's work, connected to this podcast, there will be links on how to see what she does and get in touch with her if that's something that may appeal to you. And if you like this podcast and if you want to listen to more famous people that you'll never know, like our Spotify podcast, you can like our YouTube page, share it around, and we can go from there. But Tania, thank you very much.
No
and
worries.
we will see you all later. Bye-bye.